Hello students, today we'll take the second chapter from our history and civics section, especially the civics section, salient features of the constitution part 1. In this the syllabus mentions only single citizenship, universal adult franchisee and fundamental rights. Fundamental duties has been excluded this year. Our constitution has established a democratic society providing justice to all, irrespective of their social or cultural background. It has many salient features, some of which are given below. Single citizenship. The Indian Constitution provides for a single citizenship. This means that all Indians, irrespective of their state of their domicile, are the citizens of India. This is unlike the system prevailing in the USA, where one can be a citizen of the New York State as well as an American citizen. In India, a person born in Punjab or in Kerala can only be a citizen of India and not a citizen of the state of their domicile as well. This has been done to ward off separatist tendencies and promote fraternity and unity among the people. However, by the Citizenship Amendment Act 2003, the Government of India has decided to grant dual citizenship to all the persons of India of Indian origin who migrated to other countries after January 26, 1950. All privileges of an Indian citizenship except the right of voting could be enjoyed by those holding dual citizenship. So here we see the difference between the Indian democracy and the United States. In India, you are citizen of only India. You may belong to different states. You might be a Bengali, you might be a Punjabi, you might be a Marathi or a Gujarati, but you cannot be a citizen of Gujarat and the citizen of India. You are a citizen of India though you are a Gujarati. You are a citizen of you are a citizen of India though you are a Marathi. But in USA, you can be a US citizen as well as the citizen of the states where you have been born, because United States of America is a configuration of 13 states which came together. So there you can be a citizen of that particular state as well as a citizen of the United States of America. However, in India, we have given special status to NRIs or PIOs, persons of Indian origin, persons who migrated to foreign countries after 1950. Okay, after 1950, so that was given to them. So these people, they have got a right, all the other rights except the right to vote. They are called as Indians, but they don't have the right to vote. Universal adult franchisee. This means that all persons of 18 years of age and above have the right to vote irrespective of their caste, color, religion, etc. The British has provided for communal electorate under the Act of 1919 and 1935. The Constitution of India has replaced this system by introducing joint electorate. According to this system, resident voters of a constituency have to vote for the same candidate irrespective of his caste or creed. Similarly, some seats are reserved for scheduled caste, from scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. All people from such constituencies have to vote for the candidate of the area. This system is aimed at curbing communal politics and fostering communal harmony. So I believe you'll understand what is universal adult franchise. Okay, it's the right to vote of anybody who's above the age of 18. 18 and above, people born in India, Indian citizens who are 18 and above have the right to vote, irrespective of their caste, their color, their religion, how they look. So they have the right to vote. During the British era, there was a rule passed in 1919 that the Muslims would vote only for the Muslim candidates, and then there was a general category. And again in 1935, the same rule was set up again. But when India got independence, we had done away with this system, and we have a universal adult franchisee. Universal means if you belong to a particular constituency and there are different candidates contesting the elections, whether they are Hindus, Muslim, Christians, or whatever, you have to vote for that particular candidate irrespective of your own religion. You cannot choose that I'll vote only for a Hindu, I'll vote only for a Muslim or a Christian. So in this way, we have done away with the 1919 Acts. Okay, so but in certain constituencies, there are seats reserved for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes. So people who are representing this constituency are people belonging to that community. If you find out, for example, let's take Makar Dokda in Nagpur. So here you will find a lot of people belonging from the scheduled tribes, that the Gond Samaj. So people who belong to this community would represent this locality, will represent this constituency. Fundamental rights. The fundamental rights are basic human rights which provide the conditions essential for the all-round development of a human being. They protect people against unjust discrimination among members of the community. They don't make distinctions between human beings based on race, color, sex, religion, or other such consideration. They give recognition to dignity and equality of all human beings. The fundamental rights are given in Part 3 of the Constitution of India. They are classified into the following categories. So what are fundamental rights? Fundamental rights are the basic human rights. The time you are born, from the time you are born with rights. You have got rights, irrespective of what religion you belong to and what is your gender. Okay, so we have certain fundamental rights, basic rights, that are such as the right to equality. Equality before, that is, right to equality means equality before law, equality of opportunity, abolition of untouchability, abolition of titles. Then we have the right to freedom. Okay, then we have the right to freedom of religion, right against exploitation, right to constitutional remedies, cultural and educational rights, so forth and so on. So we are around 6 to 7 rights that we have. So let's discuss about them in detail. The fundamental rights are given in Part 3 of the Constitution of India. They are classified into the following categories. The right to equality, Article 14 to 18. The success of Indian democracy largely rests on the right to equality of citizens. The right to equality has political, social, and economic components. A. Equality before law. Article 14 guarantees both equality before law as well as equality in protection by law, irrespective of economic status, caste, color, creed, religion, or sex. Practice of any kind of discrimination on these accounts makes it a punishable offense. Article 15 prohibits discrimination on the grounds mentioned in Article 14. For example, admission to educational institutions, allotment of shops, etc., have to be made without discrimination mentioned in Article 14. This ensures social and economic equality. So, equality before law, in this you are guaranteed equality and protection by the law, irrespective of your economic status, whether you are rich or you are poor, of what caste, color, or creed you belong to, what religion you belong to, what gender you are. If anybody discriminates you, it's a punishable offense. If anybody does not give you admission in a college just because of your religion, it becomes an offense under the Article 15. Then we have equality of opportunity. Article 16 provides for equality of opportunity for all citizens in matters relating to employment in an office under the central or state government. It prohibits any sort of discrimination on grounds mentioned in Article 14. It also allows making of reservations of post in favor of scheduled castes and tribes by passing a law. At present, 27% posts in government services are reserved for other backward classes, OBC, 15% for scheduled caste, and 7.5% for the scheduled tribes. So equality of opportunity means apart from the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and OBCs, the open category, everybody are equal in the eyes of law when it comes to giving you a job in the central government or the state government. Okay, seats cannot be reserved for Christians, and seats cannot be reserved for Muslims, and seats cannot be reserved for Hindus in that way. There are certain sections where the seats are reserved for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and the other backward categories. 27% for other backward categories, classes, OBCs, 15% for the scheduled caste, and 7.5% for the scheduled tribe. It should not amount to more than 50%. So it sums up, I think, somewhere around 49.5% here. Let's calculate that. Yeah, here it is 49.5%. Say 27 plus 15, 32, 32 plus 7, 39.5. So in this way, the Article 14 allows the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe to have certain privileges because they had been discriminated for many centuries together, and we are trying to bring them at par with the other citizens of the country. So even reservation of posts, some posts are reserved for them, they get promotion easily as compared to the open category. Then abolition of untouchability. What is this untouchability? Long back there was a very evil social custom where certain sections of the Indian society were considered as untouchables. They were not looked upon with respect. So this has been abolished in Article 17. Article 17 abolishes untouchability and its practice in any form. Any person preventing the other from entering a place of public worship or using a public well, a public transport system, etc., can be punished by law. So all these were allowed earlier, like there were certain wells where only the upper caste Hindus were allowed to fill water from. The untouchables were not allowed to fill water from this part of the well, this part of the village. Okay, so if we try to do that, it's a punishable offense. Abolition of titles. Titles here means Raja of Nagpur, Raja of Hyderabad. Okay, so now we don't have this title of Rajas. Earlier they were known by the title of Rajas. Article 18 abolishes all titles like Rai Sahib, Khan Bahadur, Maharaja, etc. These titles are considered a negation of equal status for all. However, titles such as Bharat Ratna, etc., given for meritorious public service or other titles in fields of sports, academic honors, or military service are not covered by this provision. The 42nd Amendment Act 1976 puts certain restrictions on the right to equality. A person cannot move the court if his right to equality is restricted to implement the directive principles of state policy. Understood? Right to freedom, Article 19 and Article 19 to Article 22. So, according to the right of equality, Article 15, the Constitution says that the government shall not deny to any person in India equality before the law or the equal protection of the laws. It means that no person is above the law. There cannot be any distinction between a political leader, government official, and an ordinary citizen. Every citizen, from the Prime Minister to a small farmer in a remote village, is subjected to the same law. For example, a few years ago, a former Prime Minister of the country faced a court case on charges of cheating. The court finally declared that he was not guilty, but as long as the case continued, he had to go to the court, give evidence, and file papers just like any ordinary citizen. So, the government shall not discriminate against any citizen on grounds of religion, caste, ethnicity, sex, or place of birth. So, these are all done for because equality does not mean giving everyone the same treatment no matter what they need. Equality means giving everyone an equal opportunity to achieve whatever one is capable of. Sometimes it is necessary to give special treatment to someone in order to ensure equal opportunity. This is what job reservations do. Just to clarify this, the Constitution says that reservations of this kind are not a violation of right to equality. So I hope you have understood this. Okay, so we cannot move a court saying that why have the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes being given so much privilege, so many privileges. This is because they have been given this so that they come up in society, an opportunity to come up in society. Okay, so now we move to right to freedom. Article 19 to 22. This right is a cluster of 6 essential freedoms. Okay, there are six freedoms. Under Article 19, the Constitution guarantees 6 basic freedoms to its citizens, which is freedom of speech and expression, freedom to assemble peacefully without arms, freedom to form associations and unions, freedom to move freely throughout India, freedom to reside and settle in any part of India, freedom to practice any profession, trade or business. So these all come under the right to freedom. You can freely express, you can freely talk, say what you want to say, but you have to be sure that you are not hurting the sentiments, or you are not propagating a false belief, a false idea about somebody. You are not tarnishing that person's image. If you have a right to speech, does not mean you can say whatever you want to say just because you have the right to say it. Freedom to assemble peacefully without arms. Okay, but where? Just because you've got the freedom to assemble, you cannot say that okay, we will go today, we will assemble in the Chandradevi Saraf school, we'll go to Mary Pospin school and assemble over there, we'll go to Seventh Day Adventist and assemble over there. No, you are allowed to assemble provided you take a prior permission, give a written application to the government that you are assembling for certain purposes, and if it does not violates the free flow of traffic or free flow of movement or the regular working of that particular area, then the government would allow you to assemble there. Otherwise, no, you are not allowed to assemble anywhere just because you have got the right to assemble freely. And freedom to form associations and unions. If you are working for certain firms, company, associations, you can make your own unions there. Then freedom to move freely throughout India. This means you can, though you are a Marathi or a Maharashtrian, you can move to Jammu and Kashmir, you can come in and out, go to Goa, go to Chandigarh, wherever you want to go. Freedom to movement does not allow you to enter into a person's private property. There are certain private properties, buildings, houses, private properties, farms. You are not allowed to go there just because you have the freedom to move throughout India. Freedom to reside and settle in any part of India. You can buy a plot, you can buy a piece of land, and you can settle in any part of India. Freedom to practice any profession, trade, or business. That means you are not subject to your traditional profession. Traditionally, you might be born in a kumbhar family where you are supposed to make pots, but now the government allows you to become a doctor, to become a lawyer, to become an engineer, whatever you want. You can practice your own trade, your own business, your own profession, whatever you like to be. If you have the capabilities, if you have the potential, if you have the qualification, you can become whatever you want to be. So these all come under rights to freedom, article 19 to 22. There is no specific provision in our constitution guaranteeing the freedom of press, because freedom of press is included in the wider freedom of expression, which is guaranteed by article 19. So here in India we don't have the freedom of press. Why? Because it's already come under the title of freedom of expression. You can express it in the way of in your printing, in the way of movies, in the way of songs and poems, in the way of stories, in the way of direct speech. So freedom of expression, you can express it in any way. The constitution restricts the state from enacting laws which could curtail these freedoms, but at the same time it does not mean that the state cannot make laws for the public good or for the protection of interest of the trade and profession. So you have freedom of, see, there are so many freedoms given to you, but at the same time the government also has particular rights. So against who or against whom are the citizens being protected? The citizens are being protected against the other citizens as well as against the government. Sometimes the government becomes so autocratic that they impede the rights of the citizen. So to protect us from the government, the Indian judiciary has made certain laws, but this does not mean that the government doesn't have any authority over you. They cannot curtail your rights. For example, now very recently we have this Janta curfew. Because of the spread of coronavirus, we are not allowed to move out of a house. Okay, if we move out of the house right now in this period of Janta curfew, we can be criminally charged for violating the law. So this has restricted our freedom of movement right now. Okay, so the government has given certain constitutional article rights which restricts or which allows the state to enacting certain laws which could curtail our freedoms for a short period of time, for a certain duration of time, until and unless that condition is removed. For example, right now it is the coronavirus. Then we had in Jammu and Kashmir where there was a curfew there. So in such cases the government has right to take away our rights. For example, states can make the law to prescribe certain minimum educational, technical or other qualification for entry to certain professions. Even in this case, under normal circumstances, you cannot become a doctor just because you have a desire to become a doctor. You have to have the qualification, the basic knowledge. If you don't have the basic knowledge of being a doctor, wonder what type of doctor you'd be. Okay, if you want to become an engineer, you have to have that qualification, you have to have that potential in you. You just cannot call yourself an engineer and start building bridges, start making buildings, constructing roads. Okay, so you have to have certain qualification to enter into that particular profession. Similarly, the right to reside and settle in any part of India cannot go against the laws of that particular territory where larger national interest is involved. For example, one cannot displace tribal communities and settle in their territory. Exception has also been made in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, where only bona fide residents of that state can engage in sale and purchase of land. So in tribal areas, you cannot buy a land that belongs to tribal. If anybody is selling you land, kindly confirm that the land does not belong to the STs, scheduled tribes, because they are not allowed to sell it to general public. A scheduled caste or scheduled tribe person is allowed to sell the land only to a scheduled tribe person. You cannot settle in a tribal belt. That is meant only for tribal people. In Jammu and Kashmir also, was a special status given to Jammu and Kashmir, but recently we are trying to remove it. In Jammu and Kashmir, only people belonging to that state are allowed to purchase land. If a Kashmiri wants to sell his land, he'll be able to sell it only to a Kashmiri. There are its positives and there are its negatives too. They have plus and minus in that. Okay, limitations. Emergency. Article 19 can be suspended during emergency. So what are the limitations of the right to freedom? So during an emergency, Article 19 says that your right to freely move, freely assemble can be taken away from you during the time of emergency. Not absolute. The security of the state and the national interest being of the paramount interest, reasonable restrictions could be imposed on the implementation on this right. Laws of Parliament. Legislation like the Preventive Detention, Essential Service Maintenance Act (ESMA), or law to ensure that delivery of essential services like public transport, health services, etc., which if obstructed would affect the normal life of the people. Impose certain restriction on the right to freedom. Protection in respect of conviction for offence. Under Article 20, the following protections are available to a citizen: against greater penalty than what is prescribed under the law is prohibited. So see how the Constitution protects its citizen. If a particular citizen commits a certain crime, there is a certain limit of punishment that is given to him. The punishment should not exceed beyond that. If the punishment exceed beyond that, he can always approach the law, always approach the court. So Article 20, it gives us that it allows us to approach the court when any of these things are violated by the government. Against greater penalty than what is prescribed under the law is prohibited. No one can be punished or persecuted for the same offence twice. If a person commits a crime, if a person murders someone, he cannot be hanged twice, or he cannot be asked to undergo a rigorous 7 years imprisonment, and later on, after he finishes the 7 years imprisonment, he is hanged. That cannot be done. A person cannot be compelled to be a witness in the case where he himself is accused of the offence. Okay, understood the third point? If a person commits a crime, he cannot be the witness, or he cannot be forced to be a witness. Protection of life and personal liberty. Under Article 21, a person cannot be deprived of his life and liberty except in accordance with the law. So if a person, he is a repeated offender, in that case his right to freedom is taken away from him. He is put behind bars. If he is a very big criminal, if he has done something which is way out of the way, he may be even hanged to death. So in this case, his life is being taken from him, his freedom of movement is being taken from him, because he does not deserve to be in the society. But otherwise, he cannot be deprived of his life and liberty. If he is a normal citizen, a law-abiding citizen, his rights and duties cannot be taken away from him. His liberties, only if he is a habitual offender, if he is an habitual criminal, he is put behind bars, or his life is taken away from him if he's a very dangerous person and is a threat to the society as a whole. Protection against arrest and detention. Article 22 gives such rights to the citizen under two different circumstances. Ordinary circumstances. In the case of arrest under ordinary circumstances, the arrested person has the following rights: to be informed of his or her offence, what crime he has committed. B. To be presented before a magistrate within 24 hours from the time of arrest. Such a person cannot be kept in custody for more than 24 hours without the permission of the magistrate. The right to consult a lawyer and prepare for defense at a trial. So in ordinary circumstances, if a person is being arrested, he's got to be informed for what reason he is being arrested. उसे क्यों पकड़ा जा रहा है, ऐसा कौन सा अपराध कर लिया, what has he done wrong that he is being arrested. Secondly, if he is arrested, so he has to be produced before the law, before a magistrate within 24 hours. And third, he has the right to consult his lawyer. His lawyer can prepare a defense at the trial that is going to take place from him. Now the second is, first we had the ordinary circumstances, then we have the preventive detention. Preventive detention means when we feel that this person can be a threat to the society, to prevent the threat we can detain him. In case a person is detained under preventive detention, he can be kept in custody for a period of 3 months without trial. Such a person has the following rights. Okay, if we feel that he might create some communal disturbance, he might create some problem, he can be put under detention for 3 months. So such person also has the following rights. A. Preventive detention does not mean that a person stands accused. It is only a precautionary means. B. Detention beyond 3 months can be extended only by an advisory board constituted for the purpose and consisting of a judge of the High Court. And C. Grounds of detention has to be specified, and the detainee informed of these grounds. He also has the right to make representation against the detention order. So being taken into custody for 3 months does not mean that that person was actually a criminal. So this is done only as a precautionary measure. If they feel that he is a threat to the society as a whole, to the peace and harmony, so he can be taken into preventive custody, but it does not mean that he is a criminal. Secondly, he cannot be detained beyond 3 months, and if at all he has to be detained, there has to be set up an advisory board which has to have a judge of the High Court. And third, the grounds of detention have to be specified. On what grounds, why is he being detained for 3 months or more than 3 months, and he has to be informed that on these particular ground that they are taking him into custody, and he has also the right to be represented. Somebody represents, he can appoint a lawyer to fight his case against being detained for whatever purpose he has been told. But this also has certain limitations. Public interest. The authority or the state can take recourse to public interest and refuse to disclose the grounds of detention. So here again there are certain limitation that a person has rights. If the country feels, if the government feels that this person is a grave threat, a very big threat to the public as a whole, they may not tell him why he is being detained, on what grounds he is being detained. Second, power of the parliament. The legislature or the parliament has the power to specify the maximum period of preventive detention. Here also, the parliament has certain rights where the detainee can be detained for more than 3 months. They have this right. So again, there are some loopholes here where a person may not be given his dues. Right against exploitation, Article 23 and 24. This right upholds the dignity of the individual and prohibits exploitation in following respects. 1. Article 23A. freedom from slavery, beggary, or other forms of forced labor. Trafficking in human beings means buying and selling of human beings is prohibited. It also prohibits use of women or girls for immoral purposes. Okay, so what does Article 23 say? That we cannot make a person a slave, we cannot force a person to beg or make him to do labor, forced labor, make him to do work without his consent. Then Article B in the same Article 23B says that traffic in human beings means you cannot buy or sell humans for whatever purposes. Sometimes the girls are being bought for immoral purposes, they are forced into the sex trade, so these are prohibited. Second, Article 24. This article prohibits employment of children below the age of 14 years in factories, mines, and other hazardous occupation. The practice of bonded labor has also been declared unlawful. Here in the picture you can see the right against exploitation. A small child is carting a rickshaw full of asbestos sheets, very heavy sheets. You can see the way he is struggling to take his rickshaw uphill. So Article 24 safeguards the children below the age of 14 from making to do tedious work, hard work in factories and industries or whatever. Right to freedom of religion. Article 25 to 28 indicates the following: all persons are entitled to freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice, and propagate their religion. So, you are born in a particular family, but it does not mean that you have to follow that particular religion. If you feel that you want to change yourself, convert into another religion, you can do so. When you attain a particular age, you are free to profess or practice whatever religion you feel is more suitable to your thinking, to your ideology, to your mentality. Right to freedom of religion. 2. Subject to public order, morality, and health. Every religious denomination or any section thereof shall have the right. So, every religion has the particular rights. 1. To establish and maintain institutions of religious and charitable purposes. You can have your own sanstha's. The religion can have their own sanstha's, like the Sikh have their own gurudwaras, they own schools, they own charitable trusts. The Hindus can have, the Muslims can have, the Christians can have such things. B. To manage its own affairs in matters of religion. Whatever, like for example, the Christians, they have the baptism. They profess the religion in a way that a child is baptized, then he's confirmed as a Christian, and they have a particular right of marriage, how they get married. The Hindus have their own. So you have your own way, your own type of practicing your religion. You can do it in your own way. The government will not interfere in this matter. C. To own and acquire movable and immovable property. And D. To administer such property in accordance with law. Third, no person shall be compelled to pay tax for the promotion of a particular religion. वो person cannot be forced that you have to pay so much टैक्स, चंदा देना ही पड़ेगा. अपने धर्म को आगे बढ़ाना है तो चंदा आपको देना ही पड़ेगा. हाँ, इफ़ यू वांट टू गिव फ्रीली फ्रॉम योर ओन फ्री विल, यू कैन गिव, बट यू कैन नॉट बी forced to pay a tax to promote your own religion. No religious institutions shall be provided in any no religious instructions shall be provided in any institution wholly maintained out of state funds. For example, in a school, in a government school, where the school is running on the government funds, there they cannot promote their own religion. No propagation can be made. For example, if you are going to a Christian missionary school, they have got the right to preach the Bible as long as they are not aided by the government. The government is not giving them any monetary benefits. If they have their own private school, they can have the first period as the religious period. I was working for a particular school, MSB, in that the first period was allotted only for the religious studies, because it came under the minority this thing society, and they were not being funded by the government. Even though religious instructions may be imparted in educational institutions recognized by or receiving funds from the state, no person attending such institution shall be compelled to receive that religious instruction without the consent of himself or his guardian, in case the pupil is a minor. So even if you're going to a particular school, there you are not compelled to follow the instructions. The religious, you are not forced into the religion. You cannot, you are not that पहला पीरियड जो है वो आपको वहाँ जाना ही पड़ेगा, आपको XYZ होली बुक पढ़ना ही पड़ेगा, ऐसे they cannot force you until you permit yourself, until you sign and give a letter of authority for them to conduct that certain rites. Till then you are free from such things. Cultural and educational rights. Article 29 and 30, protection of minorities. Article 29 gives a section of the people or whole of them the right to preserve their distinct language, script and culture. In the matter of admission to any educational institution maintained by the state, admissions cannot be denied on the ground of religion, color, caste or creed or sex. So, protection of minorities. This article 29 and article 30 protects the minorities, like they can promote their own culture by printing in their own language, by presenting dramas, plays, songs in their own language. So this will promote their culture, this will promote their language. And in matter of admission to any educational institution maintained by the government, admissions cannot be denied on the ground that that person belongs to a particular religion. We will not admit that person in this particular school, or that person has this color, or the person has that gender. So you are admitted into government school if you belong to the country. First and foremost, when you are born as an Indian. In our birth certificate, immediately as soon as you are born, so it's an Indian boy, an Indian girl that is born, then it is either Hindu, Christian, Muslim or whatever. Then it is your family, your surname that comes in. But the first thing that is entered in the register is your Indian citizenship. Minorities and educational institution. Article 30 gives all minorities the right to establish and administer the educational institutions of their choice. The state is also prohibited from discriminating against educational institution in the matter of grants. So the minorities have got the right to set up their own schools and colleges, and the government cannot deny them grants just because they are minorities. And the last is the right to constitutional remedies. Article 32. Fundamental rights and are justiciable. That is, a suit can be filed in a high court or the Supreme Court if fundamental rights are violated. If you are not being given your fundamental right, you have got the right to directly approach the High Court or the Supreme Court. This comes under Article 32, that is right to constitutional remedies. You have got the right to approach the court in case your fundamental rights are deprived. Article 32 gives the right to constitutional remedies. This right is given to citizens to move Supreme Court for the enforcement of other fundamental rights conferred on them. Dr. Ambedkar describes this article as the heart and soul of the Constitution. In essence, it is not a right but a remedy. So, it's a very important right, because you have got the right to approach the law against any of the rights mentioned above. So, actually this is not a right, it's a remedy, it's a solution. Under this article, the Supreme Court and the High Court within the respective jurisdiction are empowered to issue writs. What is a writ? A writ is a formal written order issued by the Supreme Court and the High Court to provide legal remedies to individuals who do not obtain adequate protection under ordinary law. As per the Constitution, the enforcement of the fundamental rights issuance of writs, making of laws by the parliament, and suspension of this right under very special circumstances have all been taken care of under different clauses of Article 32. The most important writs are given below, that is habeas corpus, mandamus, writ of probation, writ of certiorari, and quo warranto. We shall discuss this in the next class. Today we'll pause here. Or shall we complete it? We have hardly. Okay. So fundamental duties are not there in the syllabus. Let me. Now, since I have exceeded the 45 minutes time limit, we'll pause here. We'll stop here. We'll continue the remaining part in the next section, and then we'll move to the next chapter because not much is remaining in this.